Oh, good morning, Amir. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Renard. How about
Oh,
yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Today is a great day. Today is our first episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms. It's like having Thanos get the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm excited. I am Renard Henry, one of your hosts, and my other host, Amir. He's here, and we are just excited to bring you the mission and vision of Black Belts and Boardrooms. We are looking for guests that have martial arts backgrounds, but also the great thing they are in their corporate world. We are very excited.
I am too, Renard. Let me tell you, I have been wanting to do this podcast for quite a while. Part of the reason is, like you, I am absolutely passionate about martial arts. I bring that martial arts journey with me, not just in my personal life, but also in my professional life. In fact, I would go one up and say, there is no difference between personal and professional. It's all just one life. So that's how I use my martial arts, my professional life to kind of marry together and just say, hey, this is the three-dimensional me. Whether you like it or not, I'm Amir Khawaja. I'm going to bring it all.
Man, I love that. I love that. For me, being a black belt in jujitsu has given me so much peace, but given me so much focus at the same time. If you're talking about a shy kid from New Orleans, Louisiana, that younger me would not even know who I am today just because of jujitsu, and just excited to delve in even more about how jujitsu has changed me as a person, but also changed me as a leader in the tech world.
That is a great story I want to hear more about. I will tell you this, my martial arts journey started with, if you remember those old kung fu movies from the 80s, those soap
Yeah.
opera types. Man, I grew up watching those kinds of movies. So the movement may have brought me in to the folds of martial arts, but what really keeps me going is the skills that I learned, the life skills, more importantly, and how I not just regulate myself as a human being and as an individual, but then how I can help others in that journey. And it doesn't have to be, martial arts. It's just another tool in our toolbox. But as a young person, woo, those old movies influenced me a lot.
Oh man, I definitely understand. That was one of my fun things to watch right after cartoons in the morning. For me, it was Kung Fu Theater. I'm running around the house as a kid, making a whole bunch of noises. My mother hated it so much, but that was my introduction into wanting to do martial arts. And the funny thing is, I took Taekwondo as a kid myself. Before Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo was big, especially in New Orleans. So I took that. Not I didn't get my black belt now, but I do remember enjoying that so much, and definitely like we said, the tools that we have gotten from martial arts have carried us so far into our leadership journey, into our tech journey. And like I said, it just so happens we both are great black belts, but also great tech leaders, and it's a hard combination that you really don't see that often, but so glad that we were able to bring this together, like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, and just bring a great podcast together.
Bernard, you are full of expressions. Oh my goodness. Thanos. Now we're bringing in Macho Man into the conversation.
I have them all day. I have them all day. Trust me. They love them at work. I have them all day. I have them all day. But definitely want to get into some Q&A with you, so our listeners and our viewers can get to know who we are. So if you could, Amir, tell us about yourself. Tell us about who you are and your background into the tech world.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump into story time here a little bit. Talking a little bit about myself is not necessarily the most favorite activity for me. But given that you and I are doing this episode 0, I think it's fair to maybe memorialize some of that here today. So let me start by saying a few things about myself as somebody who is, mother from the Philippines, dad from Pakistan, two different ethnicities, if you will. I grew up in the UK, lived there, was born there. Didn't get exposed to martial arts until I'd say maybe when I was 10, 11 years old. So that doesn't really come into the picture until later in life. But I was inspired by it, and then the same journey that I took in martial arts, I wanted to bring it to my family as well. So my wife and my two children, we all train in martial arts together. And my wife and I wanted to make it a point with our kids, at least, to say, we're not going to be those parents that sit in the sideline on our phones waiting for the clock to run down. We were like, we're going to be on the floor with y'all. So we tried other sports, tennis, golf, and so on, and we did the same exact routine. We were there with them on the field. We were there with them training as well as practicing. But then martial arts kind of stuck with them, and we all had so much fun. We were like, "This is what we're doing." So we tried a couple of different martial arts before we landed on Taekwondo. We tried
Okay.
Kaju Kembo. If you're not familiar with it, it's a Hawaiian martial arts, more along the street than the sport side of things, is what I would call it. It's a combination of karate, judo, kenpo, and boxing. And since a young person, I've always had an appreciation for boxing. So just landing into a martial art that combined it into multiple discipline and a system of fighting was actually a pretty interesting idea for me. My kids and my wife, on the other hand, not so keen on being street ready. It's a little more intense. It doesn't have that same rigor and structure or safety aspects as you would find in a sport-oriented form of martial art. And this is not to say Taekwondo is all sport and no street. It's lethal if
Hmm.
how to take that knowledge and apply it to be street ready. Anyhow, I'm digressing now. So from there, we made a pact. My wife said, "I am not going to go more than a first degree black belt." I was like, "Hun, that's
Hmm.
totally okay. You could do that." My kids set the same goal, at least first degree black belt. I set the same goal. We're going to do this as a family. And sure enough, took us just over 3 years, but we did it. We completed the first degree black belt program. And mind you, first degree black belt is not something to sneeze at, but at the same time, it's only the start of any martial arts journey.
True.
But it's okay. My wife and my kids were okay with that, and I'm okay with that. I think it's a great way to pick up over the course of 3 years new habits that just kind of live with you. They never leave you, and I can see that even today after they stop training. Those same discipline, the same kind of goal setting that comes with one belt after another, the
Hmm.
stripes, the testing, making sure you're training and practicing your forms, memorizing as well as executing. All of those skills they carry with them, at least my children, my wife, and myself as well. I was obviously not going to give that up. I was determined. You know what? I'm going to keep on going. And here I am today. I've completed successfully the third degree black belt program. So, as a third degree black belt, I'm also a fully certified instructor under the American
Hmm.
Taekwondo Association of
Okay.
Taekwondo. So, I can teach up to my rank, which is third degree black belt. And yeah, I love teaching. I think it helps me not just exercise the craft that I want to get really good at, it also helps me use some of those leadership skills that I've been curating and crafting my whole life. There's a great book. I don't know if you've read this or not, From Strength to Strength by Arthur C. Brooks.
I have not.
Uh,
I have not.
One of my favorite things, the way he frames it, is crystallized knowledge versus fluid knowledge. And I take my martial arts journey and the lessons that I've learned through this journey to basically think about it as crystallized knowledge. So taking all of my experiences, taking my interactions with my leaders in the past as well as myself as a leader today, trying to grow more leaders in my organization. It's just something that I take to heart. So as a martial artist and leadership, as well as what I do with tech and just being really good at my craft, I think all of those things play with each other so well.
Oh, man, I love that story. I would definitely say no one should try to break into your house at all. Not with that many black belts in there. I would be definitely afraid for anyone trying to come around to your house trying to break into your house. So definitely, man, I love that story that you gave about family. And it's definitely, I will definitely say it's hard to get your entire family to want to do martial arts in general. It's almost impossible for some. You see your kids do it, but the parents getting into it and then going all the way to first degree black belt is short of amazing. And dedication, the dedication that you have in martial arts and in your professional life and personal life is just astounding. So I definitely am humbled to have us both on this show. And I'll say a little bit about my background, so our listeners can know that you're talking about a young kid from New Orleans, Louisiana. Played sports, played a lot of sports when I was a kid. Played football, played basketball, anything I could think of. And decided to play those. Thought I was going to have a big football career. Everyone plays football; they want to go to NFL. That didn't happen, which is fine. So, spent my most of my life, most all the way into my mid 20s in New Orleans until Hurricane Katrina happened. When Hurricane Katrina happened, I wound up moving to Dallas after that. Been in Dallas for, Jesus, man, almost 25 years, almost 20, 25 years after Katrina. And it's been probably one of the best things I've ever done. So, going a little back, I graduated from what I like to say, the Dillard University. So, anytime I say my college, I always say the Dillard University because that is where my tech story became, a fruition after graduating. So I've always been into technology. Probably the first computer I ever had was a gateway computer on Windows ME. If anybody remembers that, one of the worst operating systems ever. But that was my first way to get into tech. But moving here is where I got to hone my craft and really move more into technology. But it also started my jujitsu career as well because I always watched the UFC, you watch the Gracies, and that's what I was always curious about. I wanted to get back into something that would help me mentally, physically, even build my self esteem up as well. And jujitsu was what I took to after that. And I can tell you just the things I've taken over the years from jujitsu and just the 14 years of just grinding, being injured, the grind you have in martial arts where it's not just a physical thing, it's mental as well. Because mental to say, hey, this is not going to be easy, this is going to take a toll on me mentally and physically, but I'm going to keep doing this because this is something I love. Taking some of a lot of the aspects from jujitsu, paying it forward, like you talked about in taekwondo, giving back to kids, teaching, etc. I take that with me into the corporate world as well. With jujitsu, I love training, but I also love teaching. So I'm a black belt in jujitsu. Received my black belt, and I'll tell you a funny story with it. Received my black belt in 23. So not too long ago. So soon I'll be a first degree black belt coming around the corner. But the funny story is as soon as I got my black belt, the following month after that, I went right into hip surgery. So I've always had a bad hip due to football and had hip surgery right after that. And jujitsu actually helped me heal a lot faster, recover a lot faster, just because of the physical aspect of jujitsu and what it does to you and strengthens your core, etc. I was able to heal up faster, recover faster, and definitely I can say I am Renard 2.0 now when it comes to jujitsu. So definitely, I get to ride a bike again. So those aspects of jujitsu has been great. I've met great friends, great mentors because of jujitsu, and I've taken a lot of the lessons that I've learned in jujitsu into my professional career, moving around in technology. So definitely, I always say, if and it just can not just be martial arts. It could be, you could be a golfer, you could be basketball, whatever you do in your personal life, far as physical, mental, you could be an avid reader. It goes with you when you go into the corporate world. So definitely, like we say, for martial arts, it's always something I'm probably going to do probably for the rest of my life. I could have one leg, two legs. I'm still going to go on the mat and still going to train because it's just how much I love doing that and what the aspects come back with. So definitely we have a lot in common in that aspect when it comes to martial arts.
What an incredible journey there, Renard. I was just thinking about as you were talking about Katrina, I remember how devastating that was. And driving through New Orleans with all of the debris and all of the different, it's like you're in a whole different country altogether when that happened. So to go from that, uproot yourself and try to, restart your life in a new city, that is perseverance, my friend.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I would say people moving to different locations. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's nervous. You're very nervous. You lived in one place your entire life, for the most part, and to move and then find a new location. I think it's something that I think most people need to try to do. You have to see the world, see the U.S., see the world, live other places, because you only got one life to live. You might as well. So I will definitely say moving to Dallas was the best decision I ever made, to further my career, to move up to where I am now, is the best decision. Without this, there would be no jujitsu probably. I would not be at the company I'm with now and at the position I am if I did not take a chance and move. So definitely very grateful for that. But segueing, I definitely want to keep going on and ask you more questions. So we talk about your martial arts background. But what about your tech background? How did you start getting into technology? Where did that come from?
I was a bored high school kid, is how that started. So, so thank you for giving me a chance to kind of talk about my tech background, what brought me to it. I actually was never thinking about tech, quite honestly. Ever since I was a kid, I remember playing with the sharpest knife in my mom's kitchen and trying to slice things as thin as I can or in different ways. I've always thought of myself either as a surgeon or a pediatrician or somebody in the medical field. That was kind of where my passion was as a young person. And then, the I got wind of the tech boom that was happening in Silicon Valley. So this would have been circa 94, and now I'm dating myself a little bit, right? So,
You're not the only one. Don't worry. You're not the only
yeah.
one.
So yeah, it would have been 94, 95 around that time frame. Tech boom was in full swing. People were talking about the internet, or at least what the internet was at that point in time, which was dial-up modems,
Mm,
28.8, 14.4 for most
mhm,
folks, right? If you remember those days. But yeah, we had a computer at home. It was a slow little Packard Bell. That brand no longer exists.
mhm,
But that was a computer that I used to kind of learn about software development, programming. I very early on picked up multiple languages. I really became fond of C and C++. So I had a copy of Bjorn's book on my desk at that time. Then I started tinkering with the web, and I realized, you know what, this is kind of where I see a future. Is building web applications, and that got me into Perl and PHP, JavaScript, which was brand new back in '96, if you remember.
yeah.
And then I started tinkering with that, and before the word webmaster or full stack engineer existed, I was already spending a lot of my free time at bookstores, at libraries, just soaking in as much knowledge as I can. And you know, as somebody who likes to go deep into my craft, that was a great way for me to spend my time. So even before I got to college, I had decided that I'm going to start a consulting company because that's a way for me to pay for college. And that's what I went ahead and did. The only thing that I didn't plan for, and I learned that lesson real fast, as an 18, 19-year-old, nobody wants to buy anything from you. So I had to quickly find somebody who was much older, much more experienced in sales, and have that person be the face of the business that I was trying to build. So, had some um, just great interactions with the legal industry at that time. So I was doing work for the Supreme Court of Nevada, the State Bar of Nevada. They were my clients. We built, content management systems. So in the late '90s, content management was not really a thing. Like today, we talk about it like it's nothing, Confluence and whatnot, right? Plenty of tools out there. Back then, nope, didn't wasn't really a big thing. So we built content management system, or I did, with another person who was working alongside me at the time. And was taking college classes at the same time, lots and lots of sleepless nights, which I don't recommend, but I was just so hungry for learning, and I was just determined to see this learning through and do all of this great work. So for me, I realized that this was very much my passion, and I just found every opportunity I could get to learn. So started multiple businesses. As an entrepreneur, I learned very quickly how to market, how to talk tech to the techies, talk business to the businessy folks who are writing the checks. How do you think about strategy? How do you think about operations? How do you think about product management, project management? Did this in real time before even it was a practice or a discipline that you could go and take classes on. So suffice it to say, I'm 27, I think, years into my journey now. A lot of that crystallized knowledge I'm just in that stage now where I just want to put all of that crystallized knowledge to work and be the multiplier of leaders. And that's one of my missions in life now, is just help large companies really be successful with the service and products that they want to bring to market. So I'm very passionate about that. And that, in a nutshell, is my tech journey, Renard.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So we have a black belt, we have a tech leader and an entrepreneur all into one. Oh my God. I love it. I love it so much. And your tech journey is so interesting because it was stuff I didn't even know in that tech journey. You deciding to go into entrepreneurship for yourself, which is challenging just in itself. I commend anybody who wants to go into entrepreneurship and build companies, but you're also focused on creating other leaders, which is great. Which is great. I think that's one of the mandates for leaders is, it might not be on your job description, but part of leadership is creating other leaders along the way because at some point you're going to go on to another company, another position inside that company. You want to be able to, what they always say, the next man up.
Yeah.
So I think that is great. And for my journey in tech is a little bit similar, but a little bit funny at the same time. When I originally went to college, tech was not my main focus. I wanted to be a physical therapist. I wanted to do sports medicine. Wanted to be with a sports team, basketball, football, or whatever. I took my first class, which was medical terminology. And I'll be honest, I was doing terrible in that class. I mean, I was failing left and right. I finally worked hard enough to get a C. Teacher came over to me and he said, "Man, I'm happy you got a C, but you're going to fail this class. You're going to fail this class." He said, "Why don't you go drop this class and come back next year?" And even though he was very supportive and it made me think. So sometimes I always say, sometimes you got to, change your journey. Sometimes you got to go left when you're supposed to go right. That changed my path and made me go directly into technology. Something I was already familiar with, something I was already moving with, and had my first job in the tech, working at LSU Health Science Center long ago, and this was before Katrina, where I got to work in tech, but also I was in college at the same time, which was a great experience because that's when I met one of my first mentors, Brian Birch, who worked there, and he said, "I'm going to teach you everything that I know." And I always say he didn't have to do that, but he chose to do that. But it gave me such a push forward. So every time I went to class, I was already ahead of the curve already. Already ahead of the curve. Anything we did in class, I already knew about, etc. So it helped, but it also instilled in me a point to pay it forward every time. I said, man, if somebody could take the effort and did not have to do that, he could have just worked with me and just like, hey, let him figure it out. But that instilled me to pay it forward every single time. So since then, I've been paying it forward ever since, in either if it's martial arts, or if it's in my tech journey all the way to leadership where I am today. So it's been a great journey, and of course, like anyone else, you had some stumbles along the way. With anybody, you grow. For me, I started in tech. All I was worried about at the time was like, man, I need a job. Need a job. One where, I was an IC, individual contributor, always been excelled, but seeing great mentors, even if they were direct or indirect to me, made me want to go into management and then into leadership. So going through the journey that I'm in now, I've got to work in several different industries in my career. I've gotten to work, like we say, in LSU Health Science Center. I've got to work at a hospice healthcare before, construction, finance, education, and now tech automotive now. So being in so many different industries in IT has given me such a different perspective of how technology, IT works in different industries. Some are slower, some are a lot faster. Where we are now, super fast, which I love. I think it's made me see things a lot different. Almost like Neo in the Matrix. I'll say it like that. You just start seeing things. Everything starts slowing down for you, so you get to see great people become leaders themselves. So I will definitely tell anybody who's an executive or mid-level manager or whatever that level is, seeing other people just grow from maybe year one when you got there to year three, year four, and just see them excel is truly an honor and humbling to see that what kind of effect you can have on people and how they grow in their own career. I've seen people who've never touched even try to code, all of a sudden now they're masters in Python, and it's just because they got a chance to have a place where their ideas were heard, they were seen, and they got a place where they could expand their knowledge. So definitely, through my main thing with being in tech and being a leader is creating other leaders. If you want to talk about just business, yeah, your main goal is to mitigate risk and expand growth. But the one that is not on the paper, the one that is not on your description for what you're supposed to do is creating other leaders, and that's one of the best things I love doing.
Renard, that's such an incredible journey. And one of the points you mentioned that really just resonates with me a lot is paying it forward. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, you and I. We've had not just industry professionals to look up to, but in our own personal lives, we've had mentors and coaches who've helped us just grow into the individuals we are today. And it only benefits us as well as our communities to just pay this forward. And I think this is a good segue to just talk about why we're doing this podcast, you and I, because I think you and I firmly believe that paying it forward, being able to create more leaders, using our personal journeys as the catalyst to fuel the conversations that you and I will have on this podcast journey is why I'm here today with you and just really excited about how you and I will do that together and how we're going to be able to share some of these ideas with folks listening. And, I'm not going to fool myself. Not everybody is going to resonate with what we have to say. But I think at the end of the day, our intention is purely to just be the multiplier of leaders using ourselves as the catalyst on that journey.
I agree 100%. I agree. Like we said, creating other leaders. I think this podcast will help create other leaders, understanding what it takes to get at a certain level. If that's looking to be part of the C-suite, if that's looking to be on board seats, etc. What it takes in order to do that, and what kind of leader that you want to be. Do you want to be a leader that is moving around just because of power, or do you want to be that inspirational leader, the one that people will remember you regardless if you move on to another company or if you decide to retire one day? And I know for us, we want to be remembered as great leaders that create other leaders that move the needle, when needed, but also inspire. Inspire is a big word. Not everybody can inspire others, but it takes certain things that go on with your personal life. If that's family, having a great family life. If that's you know, might be martial arts, might be basketball, might be football, might be your grandfather. My grandfather who was in the military inspiring every time. He lived till he was 94 years old, in which nowadays it's very tough to make it, sometimes even to 71 years old. But he was a man who loved his family, military man, sergeant major, loved his family, loved his grandson, me, and taught me so much. I was already saying sir and ma'am before there was even time to say sir and ma'am. I was already looking at my gig line before I even got into ROTC in high school. So he was an inspiration to me. I said, man, if I can live that long and continue to inspire people all the way to 94, I said, that's a good life. That's a good life that I want to live. So I always say inspiration is big. If you can inspire, you can have other people who are coming behind you do great things. So I would say the people that we definitely want on this show, we want leaders. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO, doesn't matter if you're a board member, you could be mid-level management. Honestly, you can just be an entrepreneur. We want you on the show. We want other people to hear your stories and understand where you come from and also what it takes and how martial arts, the background, and like I said, it doesn't just have to be martial arts, but how did those two things intersect and help you push and pay forward?
Yeah. 100% agreed with you there, Renard. I think the stories that we will hear are going to be incredible ways to validate some of the lessons that you and I have already learned, which is it takes perseverance, it takes passion, it takes a great leader to have mentors and coaches because not everybody gets to where they are on their own. It's a number of people that help us arrive at the destination. And even the destination is not the final destination. We just keep on moving until we can't move anymore at the end of the day. So I'm excited for the guests that we're going to have in this podcast. I'm actually very excited about the conversations you and I will have and weave in our own personal journeys. If anything, I will say that we will find that we have a lot more in common probably with many of the other leaders out there. And hopefully that will be revealed to us through the stories. And the pressure that you and I face in our daily lives, I think is just another way for us to train, if you will. That training for me at least, it doesn't stop on the mat. It continues on into what I do, uh, the challenges that I have to try and help solve for the business. There's always a deadline looming one way or the other. So there's always constant mental juggles that happens in our lives. So super excited and looking forward to it.
Man, yeah, I think for me, this first episode, this conversation is going to be awe inspiring every single time. So definitely looking forward to it. We are looking forward to having you, the audience, on this podcast. We are looking to hear your stories, and just I know we are both excited for it. So I definitely want to, do you have any last remarks, Amir, for our podcast audience?
Well, I don't want to just stop at last remarks, Renard. I have 10 questions for you, sir.
Oh, let's go. Let's go. See, I thought we were gonna stop. Let's go. Let's go.
All right. Well, all right. Since you started this podcast episode, I'm going to start with my 10 questions for you. You ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. So I have a question for you about leadership. Now, I know we're going to get deeper into it. You shared some of your leadership background, but when you're solving problems at Toyota, do you ever feel tempted to put server racks into submission holds?
Oh man, if I could, I would. I'll be honest. If I could, I would. I always tell people about, leading in a time of crisis, or like I like to call it, calmness and darkness when it comes to stuff like that. So I believe that, you have to regulate, of course, your emotions, because everything's going hectic with it, depending on what type of project is, what kind of emergency, how do you still inspire the team in order to get through that as well? Because your team feeds off you in a sense. If you put it to the way of football, your team feeds off you. If you don't feel like you're calm, the team won't as well. So I think it comes to that. It comes to active listening, understanding what's going on with the issue, what your team's coming back with, so you, as the person who is leading the team, can come up with some answers. Also, listen to the answers that your team have and come to a resolution with it. So definitely say that. But if we're just talking about jujitsu, oh man, I don't know how many times that I wanted to stranglehold a server, switches, etc. Have come down, and sometimes you just want it to just work if you can. So definitely understand that. But in seriousness, yes, being knowing your emotions and understanding it, and it goes back to martial arts. Martial arts will make you very calm. It will humble you in a sense, because understanding that what it takes, and understanding that in jiu-jitsu it just can't be all muscle in order to get something done. It has to be technique, because when you go against somebody who's, let's say, 135 pounds, and they really know what they're doing and you don't, as a bigger guy, you're gonna get humbled very quickly. So it's definitely humbling, is one big thing I would say, and just understanding and regulating, and that's something that jujitsu does for you.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you mentioned emotional regulation because in times of crises or when there's an emergency, that emotional regulation comes in. I mean, it becomes critical, you
Hmm.
know, absolutely critical. All right. So I want to get through 10 questions. I'm going to ask you a question about discipline, another facet of martial arts that you and I
Ooh.
have learned. What's
Oh.
harder, convincing your team to follow IT security protocols or convincing a white belt to stop trying flashy moves from YouTube?
Man, I love these questions. I love these questions. Oh man, what's difficult? I'm gonna go to the latter. I'm gonna say both. Because on the mats, there's so much information when it comes to jujitsu. So they'll pull something, but trying to have them understand that, like, you need to know the basics first. Before you even try to do anything flashy. I would say the same thing when it comes to being in the office, being in crisis, etc. You gotta understand where you are in the aspect of everything. So I would definitely say, what's harder? I'm going to say both. Both are harder, but if you actually can help people understand why they shouldn't do something, I think it works out wonders. I'm always a big person that, me as leading any team, I don't know everything, and I am very open into listening to my team. And honestly, I've seen them come up with some of the greatest concepts, new tooling, etc., that I've ever seen. So I think us as leaders keep an open mind, but also know when you're going to have to step in and push everything forward.
Love that answer. Love that answer. All right. Jiu-jitsu teaches leverage over brute force. Have you ever successfully applied a chokehold during budget negotiations?
Oh man, mentally yes. Mentally yes. I would say that. Man, the budget, man. I've been lucky enough, we've had great budgets over time. I've been able to reduce our budget in the right way for the past 3 years, which has been great, but I actually haven't had to lose anybody because I've done that. But, I've also worked to make sure that the budget makes sense. I think for us, especially me, I got to look 5, 10 years down the line. So the budget affects that as well. So if I can get anything in year one and push it 5 years, it makes sense. So I think you have to have a keen sense of understanding the budget. Yes, the money is not technically coming out of your pocket, but you need to be mindful, because if you are cost conscious, the business will thank you for that. And that's one of the main things that, as anyone in the C-suite, etc., it's about the business. If you start thinking business minded, it will push you forward. If it comes to the budget, projects, etc., it all works well together.
Absolutely, Renard. And as IT folks, we're always pegged as the cost center. So I'm
Hmm.
always thinking about budgets and the ROI that the business is going to receive. So I love the answer you just now gave about managing business as well as the funding that they give us. All right, I want to learn a little bit about your executive leadership style now. So, if you could pick one martial arts technique or metaphorically to represent metaphorically a corporate meeting, what would it be and why?
Oh man, I feel like, one of the things about corporate meetings, you have to either be a student or you have to be an instructor, depending on what kind of meeting it is. But I think you need to take both aspects of both. So any meeting, if it's presentation, etc., you need people to understand why they should care. That's what I always say. If you're presenting something for the for the budget, why should they care? Why should they invest in maybe this new tooling, etc., that you do that you need? So I would definitely say you need to be either you're going to be the instructor, or you're going to be the student in any meeting at all. But I also, we segue a little bit to executive presence in a meeting, and I always say you need to be a lion in the room with other lions. If you can do that, man, that'll take you a long way when it comes to being in the corporate world, entrepreneurship, etc. It take you a long way.
That is a great visual. A lion in a room full of lions. So the next time I walk
Yes,
into a meeting, I'm gonna
yes.
start picturing lions
You
everywhere.
you you have to be. One of the major things that people, I think people moving up in their corporate world, if it's mid-manager, if it's individual contributor, if you decide, you have to decide if you're just gonna be a manager or you're gonna be a leader. And I always say that's two different things. No matter what the title is, you don't have to be in management in order to be a leader. And there is a major difference between a manager. To me, a manager is a person who, in the same as the title, they manage, they keep the lights on. A leader is the one that is trying to push the business forward and not just the department. So people need to be business minded, not departmental minded, because every change you make from a departmental level affects the business. Any change you make affects the business. If we were a ship, you are part of the ship. The ship can't run unless you do your part. It's not, man, I did my part and the engine keeps running. Well, the engine is what keeps moving the ship. So you are being business minded in that aspect.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. So now I'm gonna ask you to think back. Have you had a work day that made you wish you could just tap out jujitsu style?
Oh, how many do you want to talk about? If we do that, this thing is going to go way longer than it needs to be. So yeah, I think anytime. I think I always tell people when it comes to management and leadership, the seat is always going to be hot. People ask me all the time, like, "Oh man, I'm looking to get into. I want to get into management. I want to get into people leadership." And I always tell them, well, first of all, the seat is always hot because the reason is your success doesn't just depend on you anymore. It depends on the team, the group, however many is. It could be 5 people, it could be 10,000 people that you have to lead. Your success depends on the group. So that means the team has to be successful in order for you to be successful. And I think people need to think about that first. Like, hey, I'm a great individual contributor. Man, I'm going to go into management. But not every person who's an IC is going to be great for management because you have to get out of the space of, man, it's about me. It's about me. I've seen a ton of managers who won't let go. That is a strong power. If you are willing to let go and have your team be successful, in turn, you will be successful. It happens every single time. And I think anyone needs to think about it. If you are an IC right now and you like, man, I think I want to go into management. I think I want to manage other people, man. I'm great at what I do, might not be the best thing for you if you can't let go. And I will honestly say I was one of those people. I was one of those people when I first got into managing teams. I was still mentally an IC. I was like, man, hey, y'all can't do it. I'm gonna take care of it. I'll get it done because I always sat there and thought, well, if I'm gonna give my team something to do, I can do it myself as well. I'm part of the team. I can help them out that way. But if you're supposed to be the person who is thinking about the next projects that are going on with the business, or how's the budget going to run, or man, maybe we have an acquisition coming, and you are always in the trenches, then you are technically not doing the job that you got hired for at the end of the day. So that always goes back to one of your jobs as a leader, no matter what level you're at, is to create other leaders. You should be able to go on vacation and the ship continues to keep running. No matter if you're on vacation for a week, a day, etc. And you as a leader should be comfortable and say, man, I'm going to take some time off and I don't have to worry about what goes on at the office. I'll be able to deal with whatever happens when I get back. But if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job right.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. People are the point at the end of the day, and not everybody needs to be a manager. In fact, some people are really good as technologists, and that's what I tell them. There's a long career path for technologists today too. It wasn't the case maybe 20 years ago when I started, but there was definitely a much deeper, path today. You can go all the way up to a fellow even in some companies, which is a pretty serious, role to carry, and it's very much a leadership role.
Mm, agreed, agreed, agreed. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. I know you're asking me all the questions, and I love them, but I'm gonna ask you one key question:
Okay.
Why leadership? Why leadership, Amir?
So when I think about leadership, I usually contrast it with something else because my mind just wants to say, why am I doing one over the other? It's a choice at the end of the day. So as a corporate leader, and whether I have a title that says I was supposed to be leading people, or if it's an individual contributor role, for me, it all boils down to the word linchpin. How am I the linchpin or acting like the linchpin for the organization? Leadership forces me to think like that linchpin, act like that linchpin, and be that linchpin. Because at the end of the day, the word leader in any capacity, whether an individual contributor or manager, people leader, you are going to have pressures. You are going to see challenges. The question becomes, are you going to rise up to them, or are you just going to let it pass by along the wayside? So pressure makes diamonds. That's another ism that I usually will repeat to my team. People are the point and pressure makes diamonds. So for me, leadership is a personal challenge that allows me to test how far can I go as an individual and what can I do to be that linchpin for any organization.
I love that. I love that, man. I'm gonna have to put that on a board or something in my office, man. I love that. I love that. And just segueing into another question that I've been thinking about, especially when it comes to your journey and your journey. What is what would you call your superpower? What's your superpower in the corporate world that people need to know? What's your superpower?
So I'm going to say two:
Okay.
thoughtfulness and listening. I'm somebody who doesn't like to just speak up. I always like to speak up with a thought that takes into account not just what is right for the business, but what is right for the people. So, you and I have talked about this briefly in the past, people, planet, profit. I think those are three wonderful motivators. At the end of the day, no matter what we do as corporate stewards or as individuals in the dojo, we are serving people. And that's what I would say is my superpower, is that I am first and foremost somebody who's thoughtful and mindful about people. And secondly, I love to listen and put myself in the shoes of the people who I work with.
Love that. I love that. That got me excited right there, man. That's a superpower. That's a superpower I think everybody needs, thought leader, empathetic, etc. You have that, like I said, you have some great superpowers that make people want to gravitate to you, you
So,
know.
Renard, I'm going to throw the question right back at you. What are
Ooh.
your superpowers?
Oh man, if we're talking about DC or Marvel, man, I'm trying to think, but I would honestly say that my superpower is, and I think it's going to be more than one, just like yours. Active listening is one of them. I've taken a lot of time, and when I go into active listening, it's not just listening and trying to solve a problem. It's actually active listening to understand who you are as a person. I always think that when you work together, it has to be more than about the work. The most successful teams I've had is the ones I took time to get to really know them as a person. How's your family? You got kids, when are their birthdays? Just sitting there having normal conversations with your team will make them understand that you care about them more than just trying to get this task or project or whatever it is done in the office. I can't tell you how many times I've had personal conversations with people on my team. They might have had family illness, etc. And I've been able to answer some of those questions because I've been involved in stuff like that in my own personal life. But getting to know people, I think, is one of the things. One of my old bosses told me at a previous company, and this was my boss, and I was shocked when he told me that. He said, I want to do what you do. And I was like, what do you mean you want to do what I do? When I see you talk to your team and how they gravitate to you, it's something I can't do. I've never been able to do that. And he said, I watch you talk to your team and try to take notes on how to be a person that anyone can gravitate to, anyone that feels comfortable coming to have those conversations. And I was shocked. I was shocked because you always think, like, your boss is always super busy. If I'm busy, I know he's way busier than me because he's at a way high level. But to hear that was just, like I say, is inspiring. And I always also think a superpower that many people don't talk about is being humble yourself, even at a person who's at a corporate high corporate level. It could be boardroom, etc. Just being humble and understanding what it took to get there and how to get other people there, if that makes sense. We, like I say, we go back again, creating other leaders and seeing other people. For me, it's just moving the needle with people. We've talked about people a couple of times in this episode, and I think that's the main thing, because without the people, there's no way the other stuff can get done. So investing in your team will go above and beyond of how long you're going to be at that company or another company if you keep investing. I love sitting there having conversations and saying, man, such and such who's on my team, they're running their own team now. I still talk to them. I still get to have conversations with him or her. They running their own team and they're doing the same thing that I was doing. So I always tell people that you need to understand other people are watching. So keep being that great thought leader, inspirational leader, because other people are watching even when you don't think they are.
Sounds like you had a really great boss there, because saying the words "I don't know" or "I don't know yet" are very powerful,
Mm,
for somebody who reports to you or is in your organization, because they see you as a person now, and not just somebody who is, with a big title and using that role power to move the business forward, because that can be intimidating, especially for new graduates.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And I'm gonna segue again to a great one, and I know a lot of people always are trying to figure out what is executive presence, or what I like to say, executive swagger. But what do you think? Moving up in your career and everything. What's executive presence for you?
That is a very difficult question to answer, and a very obvious one for a lot of folks who aspire to go into the executive ranks. The way I've so I like things simple. The way I've simplified it in my mind is how I show up. If I show up confidently, then I am showing that, yes, I know what I'm talking about. And if you agree with me, then there is a opportunity for us to collaborate and move forward. And that, to me, is the presence that I strive for. Whether or not it's executive, I think, is just an adjective that we attach to people in the corporate world. But to me, it's that presence that's more important. And I love the word swagger that you use there. You know, that swagger kind of has a very nice loosey goosey feel to it, makes it less intimidating. But to your question, I'd say how you show up and how you treat others. Because ultimately, nobody's going to remember our resumes or what we did. They're
Uh,
just going to remember how we made them feel.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I like and we talked about executive swagger. I love just saying executive swagger. It yes, it makes you feel a little loose. It makes you feel like when you put on that right suit and you're ready when you're stepping in, and that's why I always call it executive swagger. It's just not your title that gives you executive swagger. It's the way you present yourself, the way you carry yourself, the way you talk to people, the way you're approachable, the way that you yourself understands that you don't know everything, but you're great at what you do, so you know what to talk about and what to present. Because that's a hard line for people. I've seen it many times where people try to have conversations about things they don't know. No, no, stick to your key strength. You know you're great at what you do, speak about that. People will respect you a lot more when you stick to those key points. Now, I'm not saying you can't go learn about the stuff that you don't know, but if you're going to be in a room, like I say, with a bunch of other lions, be a lion. Be a lion. Understand, hey, I'm in this room with other lions. I know my key strengths to have conversations about and how I should present myself. So that's what I'm going to talk about. That's the conversation I'm going to keep moving, etc. So yeah, executive swagger is something I think anyone should strive for. Yeah, like you said, that executive, that's just something we add to it. But you know what? I'm going to say have swagger, no matter if it's in your personal life, the corporate world, have swagger. And a nut just saying into that, a lot of things I also add to executive swagger is your theme music. Think everybody has a mental theme music when they walk into the office. What could it be? Something that gets you ready for the day. So, Amir, what's your theme music?
My theme music.
Yes, your theme music.
Oh, oh, Renard, you know I am not an audiophile. All right. So, theme music. My first reaction to that question is Rocky. You know that Rocky theme music? I grew up watching that movie and really enjoying the, underdog story that Rocky was. That, I'll go with that. That Rocky theme music. I'd say
I like
that's my walk-in music if I had to pick one.
I like it. I can literally hear it right now. It's catchy. It gets you motivated. Even if you're in the gym, that is a motivating song right there to get you ready. And I would tell you, you might find this funny. My theme music, if you ever watched wrestling long ago, Ric Flair, styling and profiling, he was ready. He was always ready. That's my theme music. If you hear his theme music, that gets you ready before you step into the office. He gets on there, he goes, woo! When you hear that, you're ready. You're ready. So that is my theme music most of the time before I step on. Of course, avid music lover. Love every type of music. I would definitely say music is another part that helps me get through the day, major issues. If I got to do a RCA, etc., whatever it could be, music keeps pushing me. So yeah, part of that theme music, Ric Flair, music in general, love it. Helps me get through almost anything. So I would definitely say that.
I will tell you, it's interesting you mentioned Ric Flair because that "woo"
Mm,
sound is iconic. You can hear that
yes.
sound and you know it's Ric Flair. Just like Bruce Lee's, he does that "woo,"
Yeah.
that you know who that is just by
Yeah.
listening to it.
Yeah. No, no. I think everybody has it. I think, I'm looking forward to seeing what our guests, what are their theme music coming up in our episodes that we're gonna have. I think I want to know what are their theme music when they get in the office just in general. So I'm looking forward to that.
That is a great question. I agree with you, and I would love to learn that too. But let me ask you, what about when you're in a boring executive meeting with multiple slide decks? Maybe it's a PI session for 3.5 hours. what's the music that you're listening to since you've already confessed to being, an audiophile?
Oh man. Man, that's hard because I will say, you're not gonna get a chance to listen to a lot of music when you got to stare at the slide decks all day and then in the meetings. So I would definitely say mentally going through that. If I had to pick music for that particular meeting, depending on what it is, man, if you're a hip hop head like I am, bet listen to rap my entire life, was born into the hip hop era, which is gonna date me. Rakim is probably one of the best lyricists I've ever heard. Still think he's, timeless. So if I hear Paid in Full, if anyone ever has heard that song, it's iconic. Gets me very motivated, especially when I'm in a meeting. Especially if I have to get up there and start talking. I hear Paid in Full in my head. I'm ready to, tell people why they should care, like I like to keep saying, and presenting, etc. And it works very well. So I'm gonna turn that back to you. What's the music for you when you're in that 3 hour session, in a boardroom, and what's gonna be your theme music for that?
All right, Renard. So I will confess that
Hmm.
I am partial to the Baroque era of music. So if you listen
Okay.
to classical music, not I don't claim to be an audiophile, but I will listen to Pachelbel's canon over and over again. So to me, that opening for that Pachelbel's canon piece is probably the way I calm myself down, or at least get my mind reoriented and focused to the long presentations if I'm in one.
I love it. I love it. Oh, and one more question for you before we knock out for this first episode. And we talk about imposter syndrome, which is a heavy topic for a lot of people. I think everybody gets it no matter what level they are. For you, have you ever felt like you had a little imposter syndrome throughout your career?
Every day, every day. I don't know anybody who will deny that. I'll just leave it at that. Or at least I don't believe anybody doesn't have that, because at the end of the day, we all are going to be our worst critics. For me, I want to be the best. How I show up to do anything is how I show up to do everything. And that's just the mindset that I take with me no matter where I am, whether it's the dojo, whether it's at the office, working from home, doesn't matter. How I show up to do anything is how I do everything. So imposter syndrome is very real. If in my head I am going to do a presentation or talk to somebody, or I'm having a conversation and it's a difficult one, if I didn't believe I did the best thing in the moment, it'll stick with me at least for the rest of the day, and I'll beat myself up and say, hey, do you really belong here? Do you really deserve what you're doing? That is a tough cookie, but I have to admit, over the years, it's become a little easier. I try and ignore that voice. I accept that it's there and it's talking to me. But it's a real problem, I believe, and especially as we start moving up the corporate ladder, I think it becomes even louder. So for those listening today who want to aspire towards leadership and be that person, ignore that voice. That imposter syndrome is very real, but being able to manage it, regulate, like we talked about already today, is such an important skill to learn.
I agree. When it comes to, I remember when I got my first chance at management. I had big imposter syndrome then. I wasn't even sure. I was like, are they sure they want to give me this position? Are you sure? I questioned everything probably in that first year of having to lead other teams. So I agree. It's definitely real. I don't think it's something that will ever go away. But like you said, if you manage it, if you understand, hey, you've put work in over time to understand that you do belong there. And I think that's one of the best things to understand for yourself. You know what? I do belong here. I've worked, I put in, I have the the background for this. I have the journey, what's going through the journey. Sometimes you have to sit there and understand, like, you know what, I do belong here. I belong in these rooms, I belong in these conversations. So yeah, imposter syndrome will always be creeping, somewhere in the back trying to talk to you. But if you definitely understand what it took for your journey to get there, I think you'll always be able to combat that in the long run.
Know yourself. Those are the words
Yes.
I tell
Yes.
me every day, It's know yourself.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. And I'll definitely say on this last one, this has been a great conversation, giving an introduction to black belts and boardrooms and who we are. I think the audience is definitely going to look forward to many more inspiring talks with different guests, etc. So I definitely want to say this has been a great one. Amir, before we sign off, what is one thing you want to tell our audience before we sign off?
I will say dream big, you know? Dream big. There is
Mm.
no limit to what you think you can achieve. The question is, are you willing to put in the time and energy to achieve it? So that's what I'll
Oh,
say.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Now, you know what? I'm not going to say I like it. I love it. I love that. So, for our audience, thank y'all for joining us. Thank you for being here. I hope our first episode was inspiring. It got you talking because definitely we want this podcast to have you conversating at the water cooler, like I like to say. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one.